They thought I was quiet, unremarkable. The kind of woman who knew when to fold the napkins and when to leave the room without being asked. My son's wife especially. She treated me like furniture, polite, distant, occasionally useful. But furniture doesn't have memories. Furniture doesn't have a past. And furniture certainly doesn't have a law degree collecting dust in a closet, waiting for the right moment to speak. The day she called me uneducated in front of her wine-sipping friends, I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled, walked away, and decided it was time to remind her of something she'd forgotten. That the quiet woman in the corner? She used to make grown men sweat in courtrooms. If this story hits close to home, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Eleanor Walsh. I'm 67 years old, and for the last 5 years, I've been living in my son's house. Not because I needed to, because he insisted. After my husband died, the loneliness in my old home became unbearable. Every corner whispered his name. Every room felt too big, too empty. So when Daniel offered me a place to stay, just temporarily, Mom, until you figure things out, I accepted. His wife Cassandra smiled when I moved in. A tight, controlled smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was beautiful in that carefully constructed way. Yoga pants that cost more than my monthly groceries. Perfectly blown-out hair. A lifestyle blog about minimalism and wellness that somehow required a 6-bedroom house. At first, things were fine, polite. I helped with the grandkids, cooked dinner most nights, kept to myself. But slowly, invisibly, I became part of the background. Not a guest, not family, just there. Cassandra rearranged the kitchen without asking. She replaced my dish soap with expensive organic brands that made my hands crack. She started labeling the spice jars, not because I'd mixed them up, but because she didn't like how I organized them. Little corrections, little dismissals, each one saying the same thing. This isn't your home anymore. I told myself it didn't matter. That I should be grateful, that modern families were just different. But gratitude started to feel like swallowing stones, one after another, until I couldn't breathe. I became a shadow. I ate alone. Read alone, spent hours in my room with headphones on, so I wouldn't disturb the flow of their open-concept living space. My books stayed on one shelf, my sweaters in one drawer, everything else belonged to them. They never asked about my life before retirement. Never wondered why I spoke so carefully, why I watched people so closely. To them, I wasn't a mystery. I was just old, simple, uneducated, that word. It would come back to haunt her. The day everything changed started like any other. Cassandra was hosting one of her casual get-togethers. Nothing in her world was ever truly casual. Not the cheese board arranged like a museum exhibit. Not the playlist curated to sound effortlessly cool. Not the linen napkins I'd ironed that morning while she was at hot yoga. She'd mentioned the party a week earlier, barely looking up from her phone. Just a few girlfriends, nothing big, but I knew what that meant. It meant I'd spend the morning preparing and the afternoon invisible. I roasted vegetables, assembled appetizers, polished wine glasses until they sparkled. I arranged fresh flowers from the garden, white peonies and lavender, in a ceramic vase. The table looked like something from a magazine. When her friends arrived, they swept in with designer handbags and expensive perfume, all bright smiles and air kisses. They complimented the house. So elegant, so curated. Cassandra beamed, accepting praise for a home that wasn't even in her name. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping tea from my chipped mug, half hidden behind the doorframe. I don't know why I lingered. Maybe I wanted to feel included, even from a distance. Maybe I just wanted to hear what they said when they thought I wasn't listening. They talked about promotions, Pilates wellness retreats in Bali. Cassandra was the sun they all orbited. Laughing louder, gesturing bigger, performing the role of the perfect hostess. Then someone noticed me. "Oh, is that your mom?" one of them asked, tilting her head like I was a curious artifact. Cassandra turned, wine glass in hand, and laughed. That light, dismissive laugh she used when something wasn't worth real attention. "That's Daniel's mom. She's sweet. Lives with us." There was a pause. Then another woman, younger, with perfectly drawn eyebrows, asked, "Did you go to school around here?" Before I could answer, Cassandra spoke for me. "Oh, she's not really the academic type. More hands-on, you know. She's amazing with laundry and cooking, though. The room rippled with polite laughter. Not cruel laughter, just casual, comfortable. The kind that doesn't think twice because it doesn't register as harm, but it landed on me like a slap. One of them pressed further. Genuinely curious now. So like no college? Cassandra shrugged, swirling her wine. I don't think so. She's more of a homemaker. Not everyone needs a degree, right? Some people are just different kinds of smart. The words hung in the air like smoke. Different kinds of smart. A polite way of saying not smart at all. I stood there, gripping my mug so hard I thought it might crack. My throat tightened. My vision blurred at the edges, but I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just turned and walked back to my room, their laughter fading behind me like static. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the closet. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Not the loud, explosive kind. The cold, focused kind. The kind that builds a case and waits for the perfect moment to present it. I stood up and opened the closet door. I pulled over a chair and reached for the top shelf, pushing past old blankets and forgotten photo albums until my fingers found it. The box. I brought it down carefully, brushed off the dust and placed it on the bed. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Then I opened the lid. Inside was my law degree, framed, pristine, my name embossed in gold letters beneath the university seal. Beside it were letters from firms that had once tried to recruit me. Newspaper clippings with my name in bold print, Attorney Eleanor Walsh wins landmark case. Photos from the day I passed the bar, my smile wide and fearless, my eyes sharper than they'd ever be again. I held the diploma in my hands and felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, clarity. They didn't know who I was. They'd never bothered to ask. But that was about to change. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the box sitting open beside me like a time capsule from another life. A life I'd buried under years of caregiving, widowhood, and the slow erosion of identity that happens when you stop mattering to the people around you. But I wasn't just angry. I was awake. The next morning the house was quiet. Cassandra slept in. She always did after her parties. Daniel had already left for work. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost, making coffee, wiping counters, straightening chairs. But my mind was elsewhere, building something, a plan. I went back to my room and pulled out the box again. This time, I didn't just look at the diploma. I went deeper. I found old case files I'd kept for sentimental reasons, trials I'd won, clients I'd helped, arguments I'd delivered with surgical precision. I found letters from judges, commendations, even a handwritten note from a senior partner who'd once told me I had the sharpest legal mind he'd ever worked with. And then I found something else. Something I'd almost forgotten about, the deed to the house. I unfolded it slowly, smoothing the creases with my palm. My name was printed at the top in bold, official letters. Eleanor Margaret Walsh, sole owner. I'd bought this house 5 years ago, after selling my previous home. I'd paid cash, no mortgage, no co-signers. When Daniel and Cassandra moved in, I'd told them they could stay as long as they needed, rent-free, while they saved for their own place. But temporarily had become permanent. And somewhere along the way they'd started acting like this was their house. Like I was the guest. I sat at the kitchen table with the deed in front of me and did something I hadn't done in years. I started calculating. I pulled up old bank statements on my laptop. I tracked every utility bill I'd paid, every grocery run I'd funded, every repair I'd quietly covered. I added it all up, month by month, for the past 5 years. The total made my stomach drop. I'd contributed over $80,000 to their lifestyle. $80,000 they'd never acknowledged, never thanked me for, never even noticed. I opened a new document on my laptop. At the top, I typed rental agreement and reimbursement notice. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was trying to make them see the value I'd provided, see the woman they'd dismissed, see the life I'd lived before I became someone they could ignore. I worked on the document for hours, meticulously listing every expense, every contribution, every month. At the bottom, I added a simple line, total amount due, $80,000. Payment plan available upon request. I printed it, folded it carefully, and placed it in the box beside the diploma. Then I sat back and waited. Cassandra hosted another gathering 2 weeks later, smaller this time, just her core group. The women who dressed in athleisure that cost more than my monthly pension and talked about self-care like it was a religion. I prepared everything again. Not because she asked, but because I wanted to. This time, I had a purpose. I roasted chicken, made a quinoa salad, set out fresh bread and olive oil. I arranged the table with the same care I always had, but now every movement felt intentional, deliberate. I was setting a stage. When her friends arrived, I stayed in the background as usual. I poured water into glasses, refilled the breadbasket, hovered near the kitchen doorway with my tea. They talked about the same things they always did: careers, travel, personal growth. One of them mentioned a documentary about women breaking barriers in male-dominated industries. Another brought up a podcast about imposter syndrome. And then, as if scripted by fate itself, someone asked Cassandra about education. Did your mother-in-law ever work? Or was she always a homemaker? Cassandra laughed, that same light, dismissive laugh. Oh, she's not really the career type. Sweet woman, but not, academic. There was a pause. She never went to college? Cassandra shrugged. I don't think so. She's more of a traditional homemaker, which is fine. Not everyone needs a degree. The words hit me the same way they had before, but this time, I was ready. I walked into the living room slowly, carrying the box in my arms. The room didn't quiet immediately. They were mid-conversation, mid-laugh, mid-sip of wine, but one by one they noticed me. The talking slowed. The laughter faded. Cassandra looked up, her smile faltering. I didn't say a word. I placed the box on the coffee table, right between their charcuterie board and their expensive wine bottles. Then I opened it. First, I pulled out the diploma. I lifted it carefully, almost reverently, and held it up for everyone to see. The gold seal gleamed in the afternoon light. The letters were crisp, undeniable. Eleanor Margaret Walsh, Juris Doctor. I watched their faces change. Confusion first, then recognition, then something that looked like embarrassment. I placed the diploma on the table in front of Cassandra. Then I pulled out the newspaper clippings. One by one I laid them out. Headlines about cases I'd won, articles about legal reforms I'd helped push through, photos of me in courtrooms, in meetings, in press conferences. I placed them all in front of her. Then I pulled out the deed to the house. I unfolded it slowly and placed it beside the diploma. Finally, I pulled out the rental agreement, the document I'd meticulously prepared, listing every expense, every contribution, every dollar I'd poured into their lives. I placed it on top of the pile, and then, without saying a single word, I turned and walked away. Behind me, the silence was deafening. The house felt different after that. The air was heavier, charged with something sharp and unresolved. I didn't hear Cassandra's friends leave, but I knew they did. Quickly, quietly. The way people exit a room when they've witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. I stayed in my room for the rest of the evening, sitting by the window with a book I wasn't really reading. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I'd done what I needed to do. The rest was up to them. Around 9 o'clock, I heard raised voices from their bedroom. Not shouting, Cassandra was too controlled for that, but sharp. Clipped words that carried through the walls like broken glass. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught fragments. How was I supposed to know? You never asked. This is humiliating. You did this to yourself. Daniel's voice was quieter, but there was an edge to it I hadn't heard in years. He was angry, not at me, at her. The argument went on for over an hour. At some point, I heard a door slam, then silence. The next morning, Cassandra didn't come into the kitchen. Daniel did. He looked exhausted. Red-rimmed eyes, rumpled clothes, shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. He poured himself coffee without speaking. I watched him from across the table, waiting. Finally, he sat down. "Mom," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I didn't respond right away. I let the words sit there, testing their weight. I should have known, he continued. I should have asked. I should have paid attention. His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to cling to my coat, the one who'd shouted, "My mom's a lawyer!" to anyone who would listen, but that was a long time ago. And I wasn't the same woman he remembered. I know, I said simply. He looked up, startled. You should have, I continued, but you didn't, and now you do. There was nothing left to say after that. He finished his coffee in silence and left for work. Cassandra avoided me for days. She moved through the house like a shadow, leaving rooms when I entered, keeping her eyes down, her voice low. I didn't gloat. I didn't push. I just continued living my life as I always had. But I stopped cooking for them. I stopped doing their laundry. I stopped cleaning up after them. I reclaimed my time, my space, my energy. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt like myself again. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I received a text from Daniel. Can we talk? Just the three of us? I agreed. We met in the living room that evening. Cassandra sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Daniel sat beside her, but there was distance between them, physical and emotional. I sat across from them in the armchair by the window. The same chair I'd spent countless evenings reading in, invisible and ignored, but not anymore. Daniel spoke first. Mom, we've been talking about everything, about the house, about how we've treated you. Cassandra didn't look at me. She stared at her hands, her jaw tight. We want to make things right, Daniel continued. We've been looking for our own place. We found an apartment. We're moving out next month. I nodded slowly. Good. He seemed surprised by my calm response. Maybe he'd expected tears, maybe gratitude, but I'd moved past both. And, he added, his voice softer now, we want to pay you back. For everything. The expenses, the utilities, all of it. We'll set up a payment plan. I looked at Cassandra. She was still staring at her hands, her face pale. Look at me, I said quietly. She hesitated, then lifted her eyes. They were red-rimmed, defensive. I don't want an apology, I said. I don't need your money. What I want is for you to understand something. She waited. I wasn't just a homemaker. I wasn't just a mother. I was a lawyer, a good one. I fought cases that mattered. I changed laws. I helped people. And then I became a wife, a mother, a widow, and somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was. My voice was steady, but there was weight behind every word. You didn't make me forget, but you reminded me what happens when you let people define you. When you stop speaking up, when you become so small and so quiet that even your own family forgets you exist. Cassandra's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. I'm not angry, I continued. I'm just done. Done being invisible. Done being convenient. Done letting people treat me like I'm less than I am. There was a long silence. Then finally, Cassandra spoke. I'm sorry, she whispered. It wasn't enough. But it was something. They moved out 3 weeks later. I helped pack. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to show them I wasn't bitter. Just changed. Daniel hugged me before they left. I love you, Mom, he said. I know, I replied. I love you too. Cassandra didn't hug me, but she paused at the door and looked back. Thank you, she said quietly, for teaching me something I needed to learn. I nodded. You're welcome. And then they were gone. The house felt different after that. Bigger, quieter, but not empty. For the first time in years, it felt like mine. I spent the next few months reclaiming it. I rearranged the furniture. I brought back the decorations they'd hidden away. I filled the kitchen with the smells I loved, roasted garlic, fresh bread, strong coffee. I started writing again. Not legal briefs, but stories, memories, reflections on what it means to lose yourself and find yourself again. I reconnected with old colleagues, old friends, people who remembered Eleanor the lawyer, not just Eleanor the mother, and slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt the life I'd set aside. Looking back now, I don't regret what happened. Not the confrontation, not the fallout, not even the years I spent invisible. Because those years taught me something essential, that silence is a choice. For too long, I chose silence because I thought it was what good mothers, good wives, good women were supposed to do. I thought staying small kept the peace. I thought being useful was the same as being valued, but it's not. Value doesn't come from how much you give. It comes from how much you demand to be seen. I didn't hand Cassandra that diploma to hurt her. I handed it to her because I needed to remind myself who I was, who I'd always been, who I'd never stopped being, even when I let the world forget. We teach people how to treat us. And for years, I taught them that I was someone who could be overlooked, someone who would always say yes, someone who would never push back. But when you stop speaking up, people stop listening. And eventually, they stop hearing you at all. The revenge wasn't in the confrontation. It wasn't in the deed or the rental agreement or even the diploma. The revenge was in reclaiming my voice. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with today. If you're living in someone else's shadow, step into the light. If you're invisible in your own life, make noise. If people have forgotten who you are, remind them. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with truth, because the truth is the loudest thing you can say, and the most powerful. So to anyone out there who feels unseen, unheard, underestimated, I see you. And I'm telling you, don't wait for permission to reclaim yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to matter. You already do. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, remember, the quiet ones are often the ones with the loudest truths.